What's up, everybody? Chris Flick here. Chris Flick Podcast episode number 146. Today we're going to be talking about where small incremental gains lead or end up creating these huge improvements over the course of time. As long as you're consistent and you continue to show up and you continue to train and push yourself, you're going to be able to reach these new heights that you never even thought were imaginable by taking these small little steps. Now I'm going to use a kid, Mike. Let's call him Mike. And Mike is actually a real person. Went on to play Division I football. Now this guy in 8th grade might have been able to bench press 105 pounds, but he set a goal that he wanted to get 225. Let's just say he wanted to get 225 for a rep or two by the time he got out of school. So let's give him the course of 4 years to train, right? 8th grade, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. So going into his senior year, we'll say he wants to be able to bench press 225. So how do you get from 105 to 225, right? That is a 120 pound difference. If you take 120 pounds and you divide it over 4 years, that's 30 pounds a year. So he has to put on 30 pounds a year on his bench press. So he has to go from 105 to 135. How do you do that? You put on 5 pounds. You increase 5 pounds every 2 months. That is not asking a lot. That's adding 2.5 pounds every month. You break that down over the course of a week, that's less than a pound a week. Those are the improvements. If you get 1 pound stronger every week, you're going to be able to hit these huge numbers. Now, honestly, the inexperienced kids are going to get huge jumps, and the more experienced kids are not going to get those same improvements. All right, because those inexperienced kids get this. Not only do they get this benefit physically, right? They get stronger. Their body's adapting to these to the new stimulus. But they get this neuromuscular improvement where their body, it's this brain-body connection, gets stronger and stronger and stronger. It gets more efficient. The more you throw a baseball, the more efficient that pattern becomes, not only in the arm motion, but also that brain-body connection. The same thing with a lift like the bench press, right? With more experience, with more reps under the bar, you might not physically get stronger, but your movement might get more efficient. Therefore, you're going to be able to move more weight in a smoother, easier pattern. You could see this when the first time somebody ever benches, the bar is moving like crazy, all right? And then literally they'll come back 2 minutes later and do their second set, and the bar's traveling in a much smoother pattern. Why? Because your body's figuring out what's going on. Those small stabilizer muscles all just needed to get kind of woken up to what the effects that they're going to be exposed to, and the body responds in incredible ways. So let's get back to our example. 105 pounds to 225. That's 30 pounds a year. That's 5 pounds every 2 months. That's reasonable, right? If you show up, you cannot take breaks, right? You cannot have setbacks. You cannot get yourself injured. Obviously, injuries happen, right? But you got to avoid it at all costs. How do you avoid it? You don't do stupid stuff. You train smart, and you remember small incremental gains are the key to your success. If you jump too much too soon, that's where you might get some of those itises coming in. The shoulder gets sore. The elbows feel like crap. Your knees start feeling like crap. Why? Because you did too much too soon. Give your body time to adapt, and you will be rewarded down the line. So you start with the end in mind. 225 pounds by the time I'm a senior. How do I get there? From 105 to 225, 30 pounds a year. Now let's talk about female athletes. I had a couple of girls go to Division I in lacrosse, say. These girls were able to hang clean 140, 145 pounds when they were freshmen, during their freshman year. So if you look at that now, if you're at 85 pounds and you're in high school, you're like, holy crap, how am I going to add 65 pounds in the next 2 or 3 years? Well, you have to break it down into chunks, right? So let's say you're a freshman and you could do 105 pounds. How do you get to 145? You put on 10 pounds a year on the hang clean. That's really nothing. Now the setbacks occur when you don't train. I got to reiterate that. If you play a sport and you miss time in the gym, your 10-pound increase might only be 5 over the course of the year. Or you might put on 15 pounds, but you might get a 15-pound increase, but then you play the next season and you're bumping down to where you were before. And you're constantly going up and down, up and down, up and down. Where if you could continually, slowly ride these improvements out over time by getting in the weight room, anywhere from 1 to 3 times, more like 2 or 3 times a week, you're going to be able to make some improvements. All right, so that's one key thing. Break down your goals. Find out where the end is. And then you just start going backwards from there, right? I always think about the Olympics occur every 4 years. There's Olympic athletes, they have a 4-year plan, right? They want to train. It might be longer, but let's just say they have a 4-year plan. One Olympic Games ends, then they have a 4-year cycle to get prepared for the next one. They start with the end in mind. Where do they want to be? What's the time they want to run? What's the height they want to jump? What's the, how far do they want to throw the implement? then they backtrack from there. They know that I got to get, my strength up to here. I have to practice, 8 to 10 hours a week doing this and do whatever it might be, right? But they count backwards, and we need to kind of take that approach if we're trying to make improvement in the weight room. Now, that's going to bring me to my in-season training idea here. Like I said, if you take time away from the weight room, your gains are going to diminish, right? All that work that you put in leading up to your season, if you don't train during the sports season, they're gonna go away, and you're gonna end up being back to where you were before. You're gonna be worse condition. It's gonna take 3 to 5 weeks just to even get back to where you were. So in order to eliminate that, you have 3 months in season, and then it's gonna take 3 to 5 weeks to kind of knock the rust off and get your strength levels back. That's 4 months of the year. So that's a huge chunk of time. And when you don't put in the work then, you're not going to be able to get those huge increases. If my boy Mike took time off during the basketball season and didn't hit the weight room, he wasn't going to get that 30-pound gain every year. He wasn't going to do it because it's taking off way too much time from the gym. If those young girls had to get from 105 to 145 and they played 2 sports and they didn't train during those seasons, that's a good chunk of the year that they're missing out on. So remember, you got to show up, you got to keep the end in mind, and you got to be consistent with your training. Hope you guys like this one. Chris Flick Podcast is available. YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, Google. It's out there. Go to chrisflick.net. I send out a newsletter every Sunday at 7:30 a.m., okay? So if you go to chrisflick.net, there's a pop-up that says, we have one heck of a newsletter. Put your email in there, and I hit you with 5 topics every Sunday. What I've been reading, what I've been doing, a fitness tip of the week, what I've been thinking about. It's usually a large collection of things, a wide variety of things, as my mind is all over the place. But anyway, it gets me to kind of have some dialogue with people as I get some feedback, which allows me to develop some ideas, which then in turn probably becomes a podcast episode. Now, this podcast then, if we're going to bring this thing full circle, the podcast supports everything that I do in the gym here. We've got a great farm, man. 10 acres, horse farm, beautiful animals, outside gym, inside gym, walking trail. This podcast supports everything that I do out there. They kind of work hand in hand. So if you can, like this, share this, subscribe to it on YouTube, leave me a review on Apple or whatever, wherever you listen to this. Leave me a review, leave me a comment. It's going to get my views up. It's going to get more exposure. Feel free to share the topic with anybody that you might think is interesting. And if you want me to tackle any topics, let me know. And I'll send it to your inbox on Sundays, or you might see a podcast episode. Peace!